Felix's wealth and success had made him arrogant and detached from others' struggles. Sharon's beauty and grace had captivated him, but he didn't bother to learn about her life. The one-night stand was a moment of weakness for Felix, and he soon regretted it. Sharon, however, had hoped for a better life after that night. Felix's careless behavior hurt Sharon deeply, but she didn't show it. He didn't realize the impact of his actions on Sharon's life. Felix's wealth and status made him feel invincible, but his actions affected others. Sharon's desperation for money to treat her ailing mother drove her to make difficult choices. Felix's one-night stand was a temporary escape from his lonely life. Sharon's presence in his life was a reminder of his own emptiness. Felix's wealth couldn't fill the void in his heart. Sharon's beauty and grace haunted him, and he couldn't shake her off. Felix's regret and guilt grew as he saw Sharon's pain. Sharon's mother was her everything, and she would do anything to save her. Her mother's illness had drained their resources, and Sharon felt helpless. She took care of her mother with love and dedication, but it wasn't enough. Sharon's beauty and grace were her only assets in a desperate situation. She hoped for a better life, but her circumstances pushed her into difficult choices. Her mother's condition worsened each day, and Sharon felt the weight of responsibility. She wanted a way out of poverty and saw Felix as an opportunity. Sharon's desperation clouded her judgment, and she made a choice that would change her life. Felix's arrogance and pride made him think he could control everything. He requested help from an agency without expecting someone like Sharon to show up. Sharon's presence in his life was a surprise, and he didn't know how to react. Felix's wealth and status made him feel entitled, but Sharon's presence humbled him. He didn't expect someone with Sharon's grace and beauty to be a maid. Felix's assumptions about people and life were challenged by Sharon's presence. Felix's ego and pride were hurt when he realized he had slept with someone he considered beneath him. He couldn't accept that he had been vulnerable and human. Felix's anger and frustration were directed at Sharon, who didn't deserve his scorn. He saw her as a reminder of his weakness and couldn't bear it. Felix's outburst was a display of his own insecurity and fear. Felix always poured out his anger towards Sharon at every slightest opportunity. His behavior towards Sharon was unacceptable and cruel. He took out his frustration and anger on her, making her feel small and worthless. Sharon didn't deserve his scorn and insults, but she endured it for her mother's sake. Felix's actions showed his lack of empathy and understanding. He didn't see Sharon as a person, but as a target for his anger. Promise, a true friend, saw the real Felix and wasn't impressed. He knew Felix's behavior was wrong and spoke up for Sharon. Promise's concern for Sharon showed his compassionate nature. He didn't condone Felix's behavior and wanted him to treat Sharon with respect. Promise's intervention was a wake-up call for Felix, but he ignored it. Promise's visits to see Sharon were a breath of fresh air for her. He showed her kindness and respect, which she desperately needed. Promise's actions were a contrast to Felix's behavior, and Sharon appreciated it. Promise's feelings for Sharon were genuine, but he didn't want to hurt Felix. His visits were a way to show Sharon she was valued and loved. Promise's gestures towards Sharon were small acts of kindness that meant a lot to her. He saw her struggles and wanted to help. Promise's car rides and conversations with Sharon were moments of joy in her difficult life. He showed her that there were still good people in the world. Promise's actions were a reminder that there's always hope. Felix's found out about Promise still seeing Sharon and got very jealous. His jealousy was a revelation to him, and he didn't know how to handle it. He had never felt this way before, and it made him uncomfortable. Felix's anger towards Promise was a deflection from his own feelings. He didn't want to admit that he had developed feelings for Sharon. Felix's silence was a sign of his inner turmoil. He was struggling to come to terms with his emotions. Promise's question had hit a nerve, and Felix didn't know how to respond. Felix's behavior was a classic case of jealousy, and Promise saw right through it. Felix's ego was hurt, and he didn't know how to deal with it. He was used to being in control, but Sharon had changed that. Felix's feelings for Sharon were a surprise to him, and he didn't know how to process them. Felix's fear of losing Sharon made him realize his true feelings. He didn't want to lose her to anyone, especially not Promise. Felix's pride was still an issue, but he knew he had to swallow it if he wanted to keep Sharon. Felix's conversation with Sharon was a turning point for him. His question was a genuine attempt to understand Sharon's motivations. Sharon's response was a window into her desperate situation. Her mother's illness had left her with no other choice. She had tried other options, but none had worked out. Felix listened intently, his expression softening with empathy. Sharon's vulnerability was a contrast to her previous strength. Felix saw the pain and desperation in her eyes. He realized his wealth and status had blinded him to others' struggles. Sharon's story was a wake-up call for Felix. He felt a pang of guilt for judging her harshly. Sharon's first and last time comment revealed her integrity. Felix admired her courage and resilience. He saw Sharon in a new light, as a strong and selfless person. Felix's perception of Sharon had changed. He now saw her as an equal. His apology and newfound understanding marked a turning point in their relationship. Felix's apology was a sign of his growth and maturity. He finally understood the harm he had caused and wanted to make amends. Sharon was touched by Felix's apology and saw a glimmer of hope. She had been waiting for Felix to see her as a person, not just a maid. Felix's apology was a step in the right direction, and Sharon appreciated it. Sharon's rejection of Promise was a clear message to Felix that she was interested in him. Felix's jealousy was still present, but he was glad that Sharon had chosen him over Promise. Sharon's kindness towards Promise was a sign of her good heart. She didn't want to hurt anyone, but she also knew what she wanted. Felix's relief was palpable, and he was grateful to Sharon for her honesty. Felix's decision to open up to Sharon was a sign of his vulnerability. He was willing to risk rejection to be with her. Felix's confession was a moment of truth for both of them. Sharon was touched by Felix's words and saw the sincerity in his eyes. Felix's vulnerability was a turn-on for Sharon, and she knew she felt the same way. Felix and Sharon's relationship was a beautiful thing to behold. They had both grown and learned from their experiences. Felix's wealth and status no longer mattered. All that mattered was their love for each other. Sharon's beauty and grace had captivated Felix, but it was her kindness and compassion that had won his heart. Felix and Sharon's love story was one of redemption and second chances. They had both been given a chance to make things right, and they had seized it with both hands.